Hey everyone, welcome to the first video of the series today, and we look at how I actually paint the textures on the walls of this amazing scene which is taken from my trip in India. And so I started off by putting the brush into the black paint, and I used a small brush to do some dry brush techniques, right? So I'm gonna use this small brush, and just by using a little bit of water, I'm actually spreading out the black paints that you see on the paper right now. So with more paint and with less water, I actually made those marks. And then right now I'm actually using the small brush and putting in some brown paint. So I'm just spreading, just trying to make the brown paint blend with the black paint right there, right? So you can see there are some black spots and there are some lighter spots which are done by using the water. So by using a smaller brush, this can really help me to control the movement of the brush very well. And I'm using this small brush right there, which I'm trying to paint more of those darker spots. So in this part of the wall, there are a lot of darker spots, there are some lighter spots, and I'm just using some techniques to spread out all these paint, okay, using dry brush, and then after that using the water to blend the lighter areas with the darker areas. So that's how I actually do all these darker and lighter parts inside this part of the wall. So this is the underside of the wall, and later on you can actually see how it comes along when I actually move on to my next few videos. So here I'm still using this small brush to paint all these different parts. Okay, using that black paint, I can actually create darker browns and lighter browns and different kinds of dark paint and light paint. And I'm just going to repeat the same process over and over again using this technique. So I'm moving on to the other parts of the wall where there are also lighter parts, but you can see mostly I'm using a lot of browns. So I'm varying the kind of browns that I use. Sometimes I also use a little bit of that dark blue, and by using this dark blues combined with mostly browns, this will give a little bit more interest. So using that brush, I'm trying to create all these brown tones that you see by changing the lightness and the darkness, even though they're in the same area. And that is very important when you want to create all these different kinds of colors that you see on the wall, right? So sometimes I also use my hand and my fingers to spread out a little bit. And right now you can see that I'm actually using the brush, and you can see all these different light and dark parts coming together. So I'm just gonna leave out some white lines and also using some dark browns to draw some dark lines on the wall itself. So this part of the wall here is actually being separated by all these different lines, just like how you see all these different lines on the pavement and on the walls and in between the bricks. So these dark lines actually separate all these different parts of the walls. They create more interest and they make it look more complete. So I'm using this small brush to actually do the dark lines, and these dark lines are going to be different thicknesses. So by varying the thickness, also this can create more interest. Right, so using that small brush, which gives me better control, I'm drawing all these darker lines on the sides and also in between the separation between the bottom part of the wall and the top part of the wall. So that will actually give you all these lines. So using my fingers, I actually try to make sure that all these areas are being smudged so that they combine together. And fingers are a very good tool for you to use in order to smudge all these different parts, the darker parts and the lighter parts. So I also use my fingers to put in some white paint, right? So that's white gouache and it is opaque, so it is like adding another layer on top. And by using the fingers, by adding all these white paint on top, this actually gives the wall more textures and more interest by adding these white layers. So again, using that smaller brush, I'm just going to paint this other parts, right? And just trying to complete this part by using that smaller brush and combining all these different light and dark parts together. So I just want to make sure that all these colors fall within the lines, and I'm a very careful painter, so I make sure that the watercolor paint actually falls within those lines that I made with my pencil. So using a larger brush, I'm just trying to combine these areas, making it a little bit darker, just trying to change the tone of the wall right there by doing adding a little bit of darker paint, and that actually makes it a little bit darker because I tend to make the wall lighter than it's supposed to be. So after that, I'm just trying to adjust. Right, so the thing is, we need to really make sure that we are doing all these strokes well with the small brush, and I'm just going to continue using that small brush and just trying to make sure that we have all these brown tones and this darker browns that are being added, right? So that's consisting of these different brown tones that now make up the left hand side of the painting. So using that small brush, again, I'm just trying to complete this top left hand corner. So the thing is, we see also some lighter tones and some darker tones right there. And I'm just going to use a little bit of that dry brush technique, a little bit of wet brush and dry brush, and that will actually give us a lot of very nice textures. And so the textures here are being made so that they consist of different types of textures, a little bit dry, a little bit dark, a little bit lighter. So I'm just gonna use this brush to complete the final top left hand corner right there, and I'm just going to use my larger brush, which is now being done to complete this right hand side. Right, so I'm going to use this smaller brush to continue making these marks, okay, on the right hand side, continuing on towards the right. And you can see I just used some dry brush, and of course using my fingers and my hands to make sure that all these different kinds of paint textures are being added. So this will give a lot of very interesting and very nice kinds of changes. So we need all these changes because these changes will help you to will help the viewer to actually see that there's a lot of different things that are going on within that same structure itself. So using that larger brush and also using a little bit of light brown and also darker brown, I just tried to darken that place, because looking at the reference photo, I kind of realized that we need to darken those places, and usually I kind of like make it a little bit too light. So again, using that brush to do so. So using my fingers, I'm just going to make sure that all these different parts are being blended together, and I'm just going to use that brush again to help me with the rest of the painting, right? So I'm just going to make sure we have some dark tones at the top, and then using that small brush, I'm just going to blend all these darker tones with the rest of the tones right there. And I'm just gonna use some of the water to really blend all these different things together. Right, so using some of the lighter browns, I'm just going to make sure that we have all these things going on, and I'm just very quickly going to cover the rest of the structure right here, because these techniques are being repeated, and you can see right there we have some dark tones, we have some light tones, and just going to very quickly do the top of the structure, the ceiling, which consists also of stronger browns, lighter browns, and darker browns, and grayish browns, and some lines. So all these different things are being, repeated as we continue on to make the top part of the ceiling. So right here we have all these different kinds of lines and different kinds of textures, and we are now seeing this whole thing coming together because we have all these different kinds of browns that are being added, right? So I'm just going to very quickly finish up this part, and then we will see how we can actually make sure that we have the rest of the parts that are being done, right? So using that small brush, I'm just and that larger brush, I'm just going to make sure that we have these dark tones that are being added right here, which consists of the darker kinds of darks, okay, that we see. So using my fingers again, adding in a little bit of that white paint, and of course using that small brush, I'm just going to join all these darker tones with the lighter tones. So just repeating all this dry brush and wet brush techniques, and using this small brush, I'm just going to make some textures right there, and using that darker kinds of browns, I'm just going to combine and make sure that this part, which is the structure that is coming down right here, is much darker than the ceiling right there at the top, right? So just going to use some browns and very quickly make sure that this part right here is done using different kinds of dark browns, and these dark browns are very rich. So you can see we have a lot of browns going on there, and just using the small brush and the large brush to combine everything together. So we see that we have all these dry brush and wet brush techniques, and of course different browns, and all these browns actually add a lot of interest in the dark zones, because we don't want to just use the black to paint the dark zones, but we want to use the light browns to do all these darker areas. So these darker areas will consist of a lot of all these different browns and different kinds of colors and different kinds of leaving white, and then later on filling it to show the space actually in between the bricks. So that will actually give a lot of very, very interesting contrasts and changes that we see, right? So we can see that just going to complete the right hand side of the wall, and so right now we can see that the wall is almost done with the last part right here, again using a lot of dark browns, using a lot of the small brush to do some of the details, the light browns and the darker browns, and using that brush, the larger brush, to kind of like combine everything together. So that will actually give a lot of all these very, very nice changes on that structure, on that wall that is made up of all these bricks. And these bricks are also, you can see, a lot of different textures, which I'm actually using the brush to kind of like help me in order to paint all these different kinds of textures with grays and browns all mixed together. And this is really amazing when you see it come up, when you see it being formed, and you can see that all these different patterns on the walls are now being added. And I'm just very quickly going to make sure that we cover the entire wall with all these very nice changes of browns, and all these very nice changes of even dark blues that make up some of the dark areas, and make sure that we have some white spots, white parts that are being left out. So that will actually also contribute to the textures that we see here, and all these different kinds of light browns and dark browns. Of course, the side that is facing the sun is lighter because it is facing the sunlight, and we are going to make sure that we have all those lines in, so that all these different kinds of browns are being added to all these different areas, right? So very quickly, I'm just going to complete this entire part using my brush, and I'm just going to make sure that we have all these different kinds of browns that make up the entire structure that is being done, right? So right now I'm just doing that final part there, which is the left hand side. So again, this is the part that is the underneath of that the under part portion of that structure, which is facing the sunlight, so you can see it's much brighter. And again, using that small brush, I'm just going to complete this final part of the structure that is also facing the sunlight. So I also used orange, I also used some browns, and that will make up the entire brown area right there. Hey everyone, it's KY Tom here. Thank you for watching my video. If you enjoyed my video, please hit the like button and comment down below. Do consider to subscribe to my channel for more art videos. Check out the links on the description below to find out more about my art, and I hope to see you in the next one.